the kind of elected official you don't have to worry about all the time. He's what I call a low maintenance elected official, and there are very few of those. I can count them on like 2 fingers. And they both happen to be in this room today. Matt Schaefer and Larry Smith. And I hope I can say the same thing about Senator-elect Hughes and Representative Hefner. Because those are my favorite kind of elected officials, because you don't have to always wonder what the heck it is they're doing when you're not looking. As I've said before, Matt Schaefer is not a state representative that you have to worry about his character and integrity being changed by Austin when he goes down there. The Austin Capitol culture is a cesspool on many levels. Men and women are bought and sold down there very easily. Matt Schaefer is not that kind of man. And you know, I say that about Matt because that doesn't mean that Matt and I have to agree on every issue. But I know that every time Matt Schaefer goes to the back mic to speak on the House floor, he is doing it from a principled position. He's not doing it to score points against Matt. Get back up here. I'm going to land the plane. Come on up here. You sit back there grinning like, you know. And by the way, you better get on up here because Jacelyn might be calling you just any time. So what I want you to know about Matt is that he is the kind of person that knows his facts before he gets up and talks about them whenever he's down there representing you. And so Matt has some good information today. Some of it will make you probably very angry, but you should be happy to know that you've got somebody like Matt Schaefer that's digging into these things and wants to do the right thing to represent you. So the father of little Miss Quincy and a little boy on the way, Matt Schaefer.
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, Cole was asking me if I go to the back mic a lot on the House floor, and I said yes, but I'm trying to quit. That's it. It's pretty hard when somebody's up there spouting off about something not to stand up and respond. We're going to begin by showing you a short 10-minute video that I think is very well done. It doesn't cover all the issues. There's a lot more that we could talk about that's not in this video, but pay attention for 10 minutes to this video, and I think you'll be glad you did.
Because every day they're out there trying to outsmart you, right? When we can catch them, like, yeah, that was a good day.
They don't have nowhere to go. Anywhere they can hide, they'll hide. But they'll find them eventually, they'll find them.
Here, because this is the border, there's always going to be illegal crossings of some kind. How do you stop this here? What do you do?
If you were looking for an ideal place to see the chaotic and sometimes heartbreaking reality of the U.S.-Mexico border, you'd want to ride along with the U.S. Border Patrol, since they are the ones who are paid to keep people and dope from getting across it. And you'd want to do it in Texas because Texas has far more borderland than any other state. And then you'd make your way down to the Rio Grande Valley in the southern tip of Texas, where there are more people apprehended and more pounds of dope seized than in any other area along the Texas-Mexico border. In the spring of 2016, the Texas Tribune went to the valley to Roma, Texas, and its surroundings in rural Starr County, and found what looked and felt like a smuggler's paradise. There are no man-made physical barriers to speak of here, no big walls or fences. There are plenty of river islands to stash humans and drugs, lots of places to hide. Plus, they don't keep boats in the water around the clock here. And just like they told us, once those Border Patrol boats come off the river, the cat and mouse game begins. All you have to do is listen to their radios.
Everybody's running north of the west side of the road. BPS 2186 to the unit at Jack in the Box. might be a lot of church. Well, Unit 661, the group is coming up the stairs by the bluff. Hey, anybody live? Hey, we have any CP, Martinez, family, Riverview? Dude just went south by the, they're going south by that rock. Any unit in Roma?
And it's like this every day. So it's busy.
Our chief guide was Border Patrol agent Jose Perales. He's a 16-year veteran of the agency, a lifer. You know that he sort of lives to show the outside world what's happening down here, and you know why he picked Roma, Texas to do the show.
The river is very close to Roma. So they can actually just run like 2 blocks and they're on 83.
We have a lot of traffic that runs into the Dollar General. See where the brush starts right there? That's the drop down to the river. So they run. How long will it take you to run from there to those stores and get lost in the public? So it's maybe what, like 10-15 second run to the top.
You come out here and you end up in vehicle pursuits. And there's days that you get assaulted, you get into fights. You go and you're chasing people, you're running, you trip over, you can easily fall. And this is the area that they work, and they know this area very well. And they know the terrain better than we do sometimes. The cartels have to move the people and their narcotics, right? They have to come up with tactics, and then we have to counter those tactics. And it's a cat and mouse game all the time.
It's always strategizing, always like, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna catch these guys? So sometimes you don't see them, but you know, like, hey, you know what? They gotta be around here.
But if you really slow down, you can actually, sometimes you can even smell them. You can just smell somebody else's sweat, right? And a lot of times these people have been in stash houses on the south side for days. So hence, they haven't taken a shower, for days. So you can actually smell them.
For the people who live along the river's edge in Roma, dealing with the constant flow of undocumented immigrants has become a way of life.
Igual que al otro lado, pues ya ve cómo está el otro lado bien, dicen que está muy feo para allá y la gente anda como si nada.
O si no, ni les dan chance, los agarran de voladita, pobrecitos. Cada rato llegan y se cruzan.
A while ago, we just saw 2, like 5 minutes ago, before y'all got here, there was 2 running over there straight to the store. Activity everywhere. You can see it everywhere. Rick Grant's the same thing. You see people getting caught all to the side of the road. They come in through all the sides of the river. From here to Rio, you'll see them everywhere.
Roma sits right across the river from Ciudad Miguel Alemán, where in recent years 2 rival mafias, the Gulf Cartel and the Zetas, have fought pitched battles for control of this lucrative smuggling corridor, for access to the U.S. drug and labor markets. This is the other half of that smuggling paradise we found in Roma. Only paradise isn't a word you find yourself using in the same sentence with Miguel Alemán or the state it sits in, Tamaulipas. You can still see the scars of cartel warfare, which can flare at any moment. And locals say the real bosses in Miguel Alemán are the drug lords, not the government. Only a river divides us from Miguel Alemán, but Roma might as well be on a different planet. It's easy to fear the border, but then you run across all these kids traveling alone, kids fleeing lives of desperation, kids who are coming here to join their undocumented parents. That's where the big numbers are down here. It's the kids in the family units, as they're called. They are the ones who are pushing up the apprehension figures. And they don't run, they turn themselves in.
They cross them, and then they tell them, okay, just follow the road all the way to the top. So here comes the family in and just walk in the road. Typically what we hear, they're fleeing away from violence or a certain gang, or it's mainly gangs that they're fleeing from. So I get why they're leaving. And we all understand it, but, at the end of the day, we still have a job to do, and all of them can apply for asylum. It'll be up to the immigration judge to decide, their fate, and whether, yes, they stay or they have a legitimate reason, or no, they don't. So we don't have a say-so in that. Our job is to catch them and process them and set them up to see an immigration judge. And that's to the extent, that we get involved.
We met a 14-year-old girl from Guatemala. Her name was Alejandra. She traveled here with her brother and cousin, They were forced to cross the river alone when their smuggler abandoned them on the Mexican side.
Alejandra.
¿Cruzaron solos o no?
Solos.
¿En una lancha?
Sí.
Ajá. ¿Y qué ciudad son en Guatemala?
Santa Cruz del Quiché.
¿Y cómo llegaron hasta México?
En bus.
¿Y cuánto tiempo pasaste en el bus?
9 días.
¿No tenías miedo?
Sí, tenía miedo.
¿Y tú qué quieres hacer en esta?
Ir a estudiar, ir a ver a mis papás.
¿Y sabes lo que quieres estudiar un día o qué sueño tienes?
Sí, quiero ser doctora.
My cousin lives over there. This is the old estate home. My grandma used to live there.
Ruperto Escobar has been ranching along the Rio Grande his whole life, just like his parents and their ancestors, all the way back to the mid-1700s. Smugglers have used his land for years to move people and product. He doesn't see that changing anytime soon.
It's mainly the disturbances at night, early hours in the morning. That's when they do their stuff. Waking you up because you hear these sounds, or the dogs are constantly barking. So you get up to see what's going on, you know. I stopped fixing gates. I stopped putting them up. I don't close those main gates as you come in. I don't close them. What for? They ran into them. So what do? Do I run to the police and tell them, hey, go catch them, they're there? Then what happened? What do you think will happen next? They're going to know who did it. I wouldn't put it past them to go and do some harm to me the following day or next week or the following week. So we just, you know what? Let them be.
We had to briefly stop the interview with him while two coyotes, slang for smugglers, moved a load of undocumented Mexican workers over his ranch.
Mira, see that? No somos policía.
Ah, no. Gracias.
Son reporteros nomás, pero no son policía.
Aunque no tomen video, ahí en el carro.
You just have to swallow your pride, sort of, and say, okay, well, you know what? Just don't bother us. Just leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. Because at that moment, they're going to come and catch you. But then I have to live here the rest of my life, like my ancestors lived here all their life. Police is not going to come and stay with me and take care of me after I do something like that. And it's not just me. I mean, it happens to all of us up and down the border. It sounds not too brave, but what do? You got to survive.
It sounds not too brave, but what do? I know, I don't know if Ashton's here, but he spent time like I have at the Vickers Ranch in Brooks County, and you talked to Linda Vickers and her husband, and this is the story all along the border. These are Americans that are living this every day, and of course the story is very complicated about what's happening down there. Yeah, there's the 13-year-old girl who just wants to get to where her parents are. And then there's the cartels, and then there's the drug smugglers and the human traffickers. And the one thing that you can say about all of it is there's no order. This is chaos. It is not orderly, it's not humane, and it's certainly not the rule of law. All right, I got a lot today. I'm going to blow through a lot of this so I can have time for questions at the end. We'll talk about border security or insecurity. I'm going to talk a little bit about the transgender issue in Fort Worth, just to give you a little insight on that. And then I'm going to talk to you about what my office has been working on for many months when it comes to food stamp spending. And where do I point this? There we go. You can't really, well, y'all can't read that one very well. What have we done? I'll tell you what it says. What did the legislature do last session? Okay? We spent a lot of money, take everything we were spending on border security, and we added about $800 million to it. And what did that go towards? It went towards more boots on the ground in the way of DPS troopers, more resources in the form of equipment like game cameras along the border, air assets, some boat assets, and overtime pay. So, we have our DPS troopers here in Tyler. They take rotations. They go about every 6 weeks on rotations down to the border. Well, that means we have fewer DPS troopers on the street here for us when they go down there. So in order to mitigate that and to soften the blow of that, we have added overtime pay for the DPS troopers that stay here. So the DPS troopers that are here, they're not working 40 hours a week. They're getting 50 hours a week. And so that costs money to pay for them. But it helps us keep a presence out on the street, and that's a strain. Okay, how many are we talking about? And nobody ever has an exact number. I can tell you what the DPS is reporting to me, okay? We've been catching about 6,000 a week just in Texas. So far this year, we're at 113,702, and that doesn't include the numbers that came out today. So take the population of Tyler, and that's who has been apprehended at the Texas border so far this year. Now, I've been told by credible law enforcement people that for every one that's caught, 2 are getting across. And that came from my contact with the Texas Rangers. 2 are getting through, so triple that number, right? It's a lot of people. Now, of these people, how many are being deported? Most of them are not being deported. Most of them are being released with a notice to appear in court, or as some of the Border Patrol agents call it, a notice to disappear. In fact, the Border Patrol has been put under a policy where if someone has been here since January of 2014, that they're to let them go, they're to process them and let them go. And so I have a friend who's in the Border Patrol. I said, so how does that work? I said, how do you know they've been here since January of 2014? He said, well, we just have to take them at their word. And then he laughed. Doesn't make any sense. That's a lot of people. Now, most of them are not coming from Mexico. Most of them are coming from Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. Those numbers I gave you do not include the Cubans that have been coming forward. This is the story that you really aren't hearing in the news. In a 5-month period of time, at the beginning of this year, we've had over 18,500 Cubans come into Texas through the Laredo port of entry. Okay? They're staging them, and they're getting into Central America, and then they're being airlifted, many of them, straight to Nuevo Laredo, Ciudad Juarez, and just presenting themselves to the field office there. Now, everybody knows a wet foot, dry foot policy. You know what that means? The minute they step foot on American soil, they have a legal status. So this is different than the illegal aliens that we were talking about a minute ago that are coming across the border from Guatemala and Mexico. The minute these Cubans are stepping onto our soil, they are getting a legal status with the federal government, which entitles them to all the Medicaid benefits, food stamps, you name it. And it's interesting, in the hearing, when actually it was Marco Rubio that was asking the questions to the State Department official. This is political doublespeak here. To the State Department, said, we have not told them not to do the airlift. In other words, the State Department has been facilitating what's happening. They knew they gave the green light to these Central American countries because these countries don't want them. So they load them up on chartered flights and fly them to northern Mexico to get them out of their hair. Mexicans don't want them. The Mexicans have closed their border to any Cubans. Wet foot, dry foot policy. The currency, the drugs, it's enormous. This is just a snapshot of just last week. 250 pounds of cocaine. That's a lot of cocaine. That's supposed to be watermelons. You see all that marijuana? Bale after bale. Look at some of these pictures. This is a picture of a truck, pickup truck that had bales of dope. And the Border Patrol were going to catch them, so they drove the truck back into the river to get away. So what did that happen when they got in the river? All the drugs floated to the surface, so they're out in the river recovering their precious cargo. Very clever. That is a cloned AT&T truck. You could look at it, you and I could look at it, we would never know the difference. I think that's an AT&T work truck, loaded with dope. Now, I hauled a lot of square bales when I was in high school, but none of them looked like that. Basket of laundry and 2 illegal aliens in the trunk. The common thing, and you talk to the DPS guys here, and there's guys that specialize in knowing where compartments are on vehicles. It takes some experience and knowledge to really get good at this, but they can find, that had almost $500,000 in currency in that special compartment there. All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening, and I want to come back, Joanne, at some point before next session, and we're going to talk about the transgender issue. We're going to talk about religious liberty issues in depth, folks, because it's coming hard and fast. But I want to show you, can you all read that? I'm going to read it to you if you can. You can? Okay, this is word for word out of the Fort Worth Independent School District. And Fort Worth Independent School District changed its policy without a school board vote. The superintendent put it in place. It was drafted by a lawyer out of Dallas. This was before Obama put out his directive. So a transgender person is a person who consistently and uniformly asserts a gender identity that is different from the person's sex at birth. Now, that's Fort Worth ISD's definition. But can anybody else tell me how many definitions there are out there of transgender? It's all over the place. There is no definition. There is no precise definition that anybody can come up with. And this is what really is even more disturbing. The privacy and confidentiality. They wrote it into their policy not to tell the parents. It's in the policy. Read it. School personnel may only share this information, students' actual or perceived gender identity and expression, on a need-to-know basis or as the student directs. This includes sharing information with the student's parent or guardian. Student transition. Students may choose whether or not to have their parents participate in this process. We believe that violates the education code directly. You can't cut parents out of things. So how are they going to deal with it? Well, if the other students feel uncomfortable, then we're going to make a special thing for them, right? But the point of it is they're not going to accommodate. They're going to make sure the transgender student is accommodated, and your child may have to be the one that's singled out. And the other thing that they said in the policy there is that if you've got a transgender individual, you can't make it so that, we're going to give that person a single bathroom for their use. No, that cannot be the case. They want these kids to have full access to everything. Locker rooms. This is about locker rooms. This is about field trips. This is about sports. How many of you saw the story out of Alaska where their state track meet had a boy run with the girls and placed high in that race? It's coming, folks. Let me just stop on that 1 second. When I was growing up and we were studying Scripture, we were learning basic Bible doctrine. I grew up in a Lutheran church where we had to go through through catechism and confirmation. And I memorized the Athanasian Creed and the Nicene Creed, and we studied some pretty, in-depth theology. I don't remember them spending more than 20 seconds on the verse in Genesis that said God created them male and female. We moved on to something else. Folks, now we're going to have to stop and pause with our children and say, God created them male and female. and talk about what God's design means. Now, I understand that there are children and there are people out there that have issues, and I'm not going to deny that, okay? But that doesn't mean that we're going to force what I believe is indecency upon everybody else. This is insanity, folks. It's just insane, and I'm going to keep moving for the sake of time, because we're going to have to come back and talk about this very much in depth, but that's being fought right now, and it's going to be an all-hands-on-deck fight, because we're not just fighting the Obama administration. We have folks right here in Tyler, Texas that are supporting this. We have folks all around the state that are supporting this transgender policy. This is not, let me tell you right now, the outcome is not certain. I cannot tell you with certainty that we're going to win on this. And that's not very comforting. Okay, so going back really for more than a year, we looked at what Massachusetts had done, dealing with some food stamp fraud measures. And it began us on a journey of exploring what was happening with food stamp spending in the state of Texas. What we had discovered was that, you'll see in a minute, that the food stamp cards in Texas don't have any personally identifiable information on them. When you look at the card, it's just got the Lone Star card logo and the number. No name, nothing. But I had seen what Massachusetts did. You know that good conservative state of Massachusetts. And I said, well, if they can do it, we can do it in Texas. And we tried, and we got a bill as far as the calendars committee, where it promptly died, to simply put the name and the card and the name and the photo on the card in Texas. And so my staff, after the session, we saw we didn't get anything done. We said, let's just start examining where the money is being spent. And we started asking questions, and nobody had been asking the agency. It's like this is the first time they'd been asked these questions. And so it took us months to get this information too. And that's what's disappointing. Let me tell you, if it takes months for an elected official to get the kind of information, what chance does the average person have out there? It is very frustrating to get information out of our own government sometimes. What did we find? Almost $107 million in the last 2 years spent outside of Texas. I don't know about you folks, but $107 million is something that we ought to be concerned about. When we stop worrying about $107 million, we've just lost everything. That's what a card looks like right there. There's no name, there's no photo. The number is unique to their account, and they're given a PIN, a personally identifying number, like a PIN for your bank card. And that's how they use them. Okay, so it's a federal flow-through program, and it's multi-billion. It's about $6 billion per year. But the state of Texas is charged with managing it, and we're charged with the oversight and the administration of it. So it's one of those things where maybe over the years, state officials are just like, well, this is federal money. We're not going to worry about it too much. But let me tell you, the taxpayers only got one wallet. I don't think the taxpayers spend a lot of time worrying about whether that was a federal tax dollar or a state tax dollar. It only comes from one source, and that's the people. So this is our money, and we do have the responsibility to worry about what's happening with it. So we have about 3.7 million people per month in Texas receiving food stamps. It's now called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. That's what food stamp program has been, the name has been changed. That number has gone up rapidly under the Obama administration. The number of people receiving food stamp benefits has gone up dramatically over the last several years. Average person gets about $281 per month, okay? And it's a sliding scale, you know, everything down from, a person who's single and no dependents, up to someone who has several children, okay? But that's the average. I don't know if y'all can see that map very well, but the darker the colors, the more money is being spent out of state. It's about $107 million. The states bordering Texas, those make logical sense, right? But tell me about Florida. Tell me about California. Tell me about Idaho. Tell me about Michigan, Illinois, Missouri, Colorado, and Arizona. Tell me about Alaska, Hawaii, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Guam. So here's kind of your top 10 states there. Now, interesting that Louisiana is double what Arkansas is. Why is that? Why is Oklahoma, it's more than Oklahoma and Arkansas combined. So what's going on there? It really needs to be looked at. Florida, 6.7 million. California, Idaho. Idaho's really interesting. We've been looking at that one. This one's tough to see. Boy, I wish I could do it better. And we've got some boards back here that we can pass around. These are the top zip codes, top 100 zip codes in Texas for out-of-state spending. But they don't include our border states. So this is not including Oklahoma and New Mexico and Arkansas, okay? But yet, look at the map. El Paso, look at the border zip codes. This is where the spending is coming from, going to 49 states and Alaska. But those are non-border. It's a crazy amount. Idaho. So this is a heat map of the zip codes where it comes from. A bunch of it's coming from out in West Texas. A bunch of it's coming from Dallas-Fort Worth. A bunch of it's coming from Harris County and Bexar County and Eagle Pass and the border. Comes from all over the state of Texas being spent in Idaho. Look at that spike. Now tell me why it takes a state rep from Tyler to grab somebody by the sleeve in Austin and say, will you go look at this? Why couldn't they be looking at the numbers themselves? Look at that spike from 2014. All of a sudden in November 2014, it goes up almost fivefold. And then back down. What's happening? Why can't we be investigating what's happening? So I discovered, one day I was in Brookshire's, and the lady ahead of me, something was wrong with the transaction. It was taking too long. And she had two buggies. And, my time is valuable like everybody else, so I moved to the next line. But, I'm 6'3", so I can still see what's going on over there. And I look over, and she has a food stamp card, Texas Lone Star card, that's been cut in half. And so she physically cannot run it through the slide, okay? She can't slide it because it's been cut in half. And so it's taking a little longer, so what happens is the manager comes over, and they simply read the number off the card and manually do the transaction, and she makes her purchase and goes on. So it dawned on me, we don't have to have people getting in a car or getting on a plane and driving to Idaho for this money to be spent. These numbers are most likely being sold through Craigslist or Facebook for pennies on the dollar and spent out of state. The other thing that's interesting is that the state employees that manage this program, and by the way, after my first session, I came back and talked to state agency people, and the frontline staff out there was one of the areas where they told me that they suspected things were happening, okay? Our state employees don't like this. They see it happening. But they are now being pushed to do all the enrollment for food stamps and Medicaid and all this online. So it's done entirely over the internet most of the time, and people never come into the office for a face-to-face. But what we know that is happening is sometimes the internet, the IP address, in other words, the computer where you're from, gives an address that means you're signing up from out of state. So think about that. You're signing up for Texas food stamp card, and you may be in Idaho. State agency now has told me that they're going to start scrutinizing those. And I think that's wise. And you know, to the agency's credit, okay, I have not been trying to play a gotcha on them because I want a solution. I want to, you know, let's not point fingers. Let's get it done and figure out how to go going forward, how we can make this better. And they have agreed. They are forming a public benefits integrity unit based off the information that we have discovered. And so I feel like all our work has been worthwhile in that respect. There's many ways that we can attack this problem. For instance, when you have addresses that are the state sends them a letter and it comes back, the address is no longer good. We need to question those more. The staff here in Tyler tells me that often they get people that just keep losing their card month after month. And those are, hopefully being investigated. But, even out of Marshall, there's an ongoing criminal case where, people are selling these cards for 50 cents on the dollar. And so how does that work? So just to stop and run through the scenario of this. I've got the card. I've got $300 on it. I want to use it to make my car payment, or I want to use it to buy something else, clothes, something I can't buy at the grocery store, okay? Because you can't use these at a restaurant. So what do I do to get cash? I can go to somebody who's going to offer me cash. Now, who might that person be? Okay? That person might be an unscrupulous restaurant owner who will then take the card. You bring me $300 on the card, I'll give you $150. Okay? What does the restaurant owner do with that card? He goes to Sam's or wherever and he buys the meat for his restaurant. And he gets it at a discount courtesy of you and me. That's how it can happen, folks. It can be used many ways. And again, we've seen that these cards can be used with a manual transaction, so you don't physically have to have the card. They are very clever. I've been told of cases where, you take a mom and pop convenience store owner that wants to buy these cards from somebody, and then what they'll do is they'll go over to their shelf and they'll pull a piece of bread off, or a loaf of bread, and scan it. How many transactions, or how much bread am I selling at my convenience store? Just scan it. Run the transactions through their system. It goes, and they're reimbursed for it through the bank on the card side. They go put the bread back on the shelf. There was never 20 loaves of bread sold. I mean, they're very clever in how they're doing this, and we are very stupid as a state. We have simply not been watching about $6 billion a year that's being spent. Not the way we should. The state staff tells me that one of the most common points of fraud in the food stamp program is eligibility. People simply lying about their income, lying about who's living in their house and whether they're working or not. And those are harder now. That's a harder investigation. Think about that. That involves somebody getting involved and going and verifying who's living at that address. And oh, by the way, you do have a job. And oh, by the way, the father of your children does live with you and doesn't live with his mother, although that's the address that he uses. These kind of things are happening every day. And the point of my investigation and what we're trying to get the state agency to do is to say this program needs to have integrity in it. If this is what the taxpayers have said, this is the policy that we're going to help people who need help and are trying to get at a point in their life where they don't need this, by golly, we're not going to let people rip us off. And we're not going to allow people to abuse the system and us just say, well, we just don't want to bother with it. And let me tell you, this is not a popular political subject to go after. Because do you know what kind of questions I get from the reporters a lot of times? It's like, kind of aren't you going to be making people feel bad who use these cards? You can just hear it in their voice. And I said, that's not the goal here. The goal is that this is a lot of money. A lot of people work hard to provide this benefit. We need to do something about it. So what we, hopefully, will get to the point where you see the card up in the left-hand corner. That's what it looks like now. This is what we want it to look like. We want it to look like, basically like they've done in Massachusetts. Put the photo, put your name, and I want the fraud hotline number at the bottom. And a constituent of mine wanted me to put funds provided by taxpayers up there. And I did that. And you can put funds provided by taxpayers on there. To me, that's not as important. That's not as important as putting the name and the photo on there. People are in tough situations. I don't know if you have renters. I have renters. People that get into tough situations, and you feel for them. But there is a massive amount of fraud going on in this system. I'm convinced of that, and it's time we did something about it. I'm showing these maps everywhere I can. I've been on Blaze TV. We believe Texas Tribune may be doing an expose on it soon. I want every policymaker in the state of Texas to see what we've uncovered, because your money is being abused, and we need to do something about it. All right, I'm going to stop there. I've rolled through that pretty quick, but we've got about 20 minutes left. If you want to take any questions. In the back.
What are the steps now? What is the process by which we can? Is there anybody else that is going to have enough guts that you have to help with this, or are you out there as a Lone Ranger?
He asked if anybody else out there has the guts to go after this, or am I the Lone Ranger? I think there are. I know I had a joint author on a bill. Greg Bonin, and I had a joint author from a Democrat from El Paso on my bill last session. So I believe this should be a bipartisan effort, and I think it's really not about Republicans and Democrats. But the point of it is you know who opposes me on this? You know who opposes changing the card? The retailers. Brookshire's adamantly opposes this. They work through their lobbyist in Austin, and part of it is they, when you think about it from their argument is, well, we don't want to put a 17, 18-year-old kid behind the counter in the business of checking IDs. We're not asking them to, okay? We're not changing anything in the law that says, that the retailer has to do anything different. That's not what I'm asking, okay? Because when you go to the Brookshires, the clerk doesn't handle the cards. You slide it, it's right in front of you. But it's not the Brookshires or the Walmarts that we're worried about, because at Brookshires and Walmart, they have got it programmed into their computers that when you try to slide a 30-pack of beer and put it on your Lone Star card, that it's rejected. I am not worried about the Brookshires and the Walmarts. I am more worried about the independent convenience stores that are not really supposed to be in the grocery business, although they have that right to do so. But they are advertising. A buddy of mine sent me a picture. He was rolling through Baton Rouge, Louisiana yesterday, and he had seen my work on this, and he took a picture, and it had this huge marquee, this big sign out in front of this business said, "Fresh Gulf Shrimp, food stamps accepted." And the point of it is that they know people are not paying attention. They know the government's not paying attention. So the retailers are just looking to make the sale.
We have 3 different subjects we have questions on, so we'll try and roll through these. And first, I just want to, real quick, because we've been asked to do this, we do have Subway left, so if you did not get that, you can stop by afterwards and they'll have those. So we're just trying to help them out there. Question for you, and something that I want to incorporate in this. One of the things that I've heard is kind of the new face on food stamps is what they call poor students. So students who have been given a lot of scholarship but can't afford to eat, and so they're able to get food stamps, and that, I read that recently, that's accounting for kind of some of the jump in food stamps. And I was wondering, can that also be accounting for the states around us? Because we do get a lot of students who come in from states around us, but are they then using those cards? So that's something that I'd be interested in knowing.
The requirement to get the eligibility requirements, you don't necessarily have to be a U.S. citizen, okay? You have to be a Texas resident. Refugees get food stamps. Okay, now the good news is that it does require a social security number to apply for this, and they do run that against a database. So I feel pretty good about the data checking that's going on. But yes, students are eligible, certainly. They are.
I was thinking even those 3 months that they leave our state and go back home, then their food stamps would still be, they'd still get the card being used. So that was just kind of something I was learning. And that you may have answered that, how many illegals are getting food stamps. They should be having so right?
So when it comes to illegal aliens receiving it, again, you've got to have a valid social security number to apply. I have verified that and asked that question multiple times. But let me tell you, for some of these benefits, you don't. You can go right over here to the Texas Workforce Commission, okay? And they go out of their way to advertise in Spanish and to the illegal alien community that as long as your child is a U.S. citizen, we will pay for your child care. So you can have it be an illegal alien, but if your child is born here, we will pay for child care. That's happening. The other thing that I have stumbled upon, and this is going to be the part 2 of what we're doing in our food stamp investigation, we have categories of people that receive food stamps. And one of the categories is the able-bodied working adult, or able-bodied adults, excuse me. Able-bodied adults, I mean, you're basically age 19 or 18 up to like 49 or 59, okay? So you don't have a disability, you don't have any problems that are preventing you from working, but you're in a tough spot. So we're going to give you a food stamp card, but you are then required to pursue a job. And you're supposed to go through services at the Workforce Commission, and you are supposed to begin to prove on an ongoing basis that you are continuing to seek a job, okay? You may not find a job, but you just have to show the state that you're continuing to seek a job. Makes sense, right? So I asked him, I said, so of the number of people just in your area for our Tyler office, in that category, how many of them are you actually having them come in and verify that they're looking for a job? 10%. 90%, they are not, the state is not checking up on them to see that they are meeting the state law. I'm going to get to the bottom of that, because if that's happening like that in Smith County, what is it happening in Houston and places like that? If we have a requirement on the books that you have to look for a job in order to get your groceries paid for, then why are we not doing what the state law says and the federal law says?
What I'm going to do is stick to the food stamp questions, because we're going to get you back on the transgender. So if we can, we'll go into the others, but let's do these. Good question. Where does the money come from that goes to advertising for the food stamp applications?
It's primarily federal money.
Okay. Are there penalties for misuse of SNAP, and are they enforced? How about us taxpayers and asking taxpayers to let Berkshires, etc., know we want it to stop?
There are penalties, and there is, look, I'm not suggesting that the state of Texas is not doing anything on food stamp fraud. I mean, we've got numbers where they had, I think last year, some $20 million in fraud that they caught. The first thing they do is cut off your benefits, right, for misuse. Most of the cases, it's just done administratively. They say you're not going to get your benefits anymore, or they suspend your benefits. Occasionally, they are turned over for prosecution. Not very often. And when you talk to prosecutor's office about that, as we have, they tell us, basically the state tells them, if we can get some of the money back, That's all we care about. We don't care what you do as far as giving them a sentence. And the good news is that if we do recover money, the state gets a portion of that back. So we get to recover. So in other words, it's a good investment for the state to pursue the fraud because we're able to recover money. Okay? So this is not a fruitless endeavor.
I think I understand. Is the percentage of SNAP purchases out of state, most of those are over the internet? Have we been able to determine that?
No, I'm telling you, we don't know.
Okay.
The answer is it's going to be a mixed. The answer is going to be there may be people. It'll be a broad range of answers. It could be people taking seasonal work and going somewhere and coming back. It could be people going and visiting family. It could be somebody who works in a refinery somewhere or on a pipeline. Who knows? But then the numbers are so large that when you add up the number, you do the math, the arithmetic, and see how many transactions would actually be having to take place. It's thousands upon thousands of transactions. There's no way it's all legitimate.
I have a whole new view of Idaho at this point.
Yeah, we really. Well, in 1 month, yeah, it's.
What's going on in Idaho that we don't know?
We even on that issue, we even looked up. Okay, what about the potato harvest? Can we match these numbers up in the graphs with the potato harvest? It didn't make sense. It still didn't make sense.
Are we going to develop a team to address the food stamp issue?
So we've been working closely with the Office of Inspector General at the Health and Human Services, and they have assured us, and they even put a press release out on Monday, saying that they have formed a public benefits integrity unit based on this. And let me tell you, we're still not to the bottom of all the information because I'm able to show you the zip codes where the money came from. Like I've got the card. This is zip code where I live, and my money's being spent in Idaho. I can show you where this zip code is where I live. The federal government has refused to give us, the Obama administration has refused to give us the zip codes where it's being spent. So we want to be able to graphically and geographically pin it down. I mean, is it where the casinos are in Oklahoma? I mean, I don't know.
Wow. How does an illegal get a Social Security number?
I don't know.
We can figure that out. We can see stuff in a lot of stuff. All right, gonna switch a little bit. Let me do it in this order. Why doesn't Texas just go against the feds and build a wall to stop the illegals?
You know, my office actually, we worked with the general, with Bush's office, the land commissioner, to ask for map information for how much land along the border is state land. So I thought, okay, I'll start somewhere, right? Let's look and see how much land along the Rio Grande is owned by the state of Texas, and let's start building a wall there. And when we look at the map, it's so insignificant it doesn't make any sense. It's just a minuscule amount. So the answer is, when it comes to a lot of it's federal land or private land. So in order to be able to do that, you're really going to have constitutionally, you're going to have federal lead on that.
A couple more.
Although we can have another conversation about some provisions of the Constitution that I think that we ought to be looking at to do something different.
Well, I bet we could keep you busy. So why do other countries not want Cubans?
You know, they're overwhelmed. Okay, so think about it. Your people are struggling for jobs. Let's say you're El Salvador. Let's say you're Nicaragua. Nicaragua closed theirs down. Okay, Panama, a bunch of them ended up in Panama. Nicaragua actually shut their border, said no more Cubans. If all these people are coming over, they've got to work, they've got to eat, and they don't have near the infrastructure and the social welfare programs that we do. And so they're going to be there competing for food and for jobs and for health care and for clothing, everything. So, you know, that's their sovereign choice as a country.
Sliding back to food stamps. Several years ago, we suspected fraud in a transaction at our business. When we questioned our contract at the agency, they told us that neither funds nor emphasis were available to catch fraud. Does this problem go beyond food stamps?
Yes. Medicaid. I think Medicaid is a huge potential fraud out there. And honestly, most of the resources at the Health and Human Services, when it comes to investigating fraud, have been towards the Medicaid because it's such a huge pot of money that comes out of the state's coffer directly. Really, when my staff first started asking these questions, we could only identify a handful of people in the entire state of Texas that were looking at the food stamp program, and they weren't even really doing it probably as a full-time gig. It was, their duties probably bled over into the Medicaid side. That's what we tried to do during the session. When the appropriations process, we sat down with them and said, okay, if you need more people, you need more resources, and we did give them some more resources, but we've got to do a lot more.
All right, I'm going to slide into the transgender issue. What percentage of adult population claims to be transgender? Do you know the top of your head?
It's less than 1%. I've seen numbers that said 0.3%. So less than half of a percent. I don't know if anybody truly knows the answer to that.
Okay, and seriously, I haven't been shopping at Target for the last 3 months because of.
Yeah.
Wait, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, you and a lot of other people.
I know. Aren't bathrooms, and I have this right, plumbing places, transgender pushes seem to be a perverted power play and little else. Am I missing something?
No, I don't know if people, until I started looking at it, I did not realize how far this goes. This is about more than bathrooms and locker rooms in our schools. This is about turning the Civil Rights Act on its head. When you go to the FBI's website, they have a link up there for their Civil Rights Division. Okay? Go there and check it out yourself. And under that link, it lists the federal statutes for civil rights that they enforce with criminal sanctions. Race, sex, it's in there. Okay? What they have done in the Obama administration and the whole legal tool that they are using, the legal tool is to say that the word sex in the civil rights statutes, Title VII, Title IX, equals gender. Okay? So if you want to transition, they take a subjective definition, transgender. Nobody really knows what it means. Someone could feel something. And they put that onto an objective word in the statute to say that those are equal. But understand, they are taking this and putting it into a criminal statute, folks. And if you think this is just about public places, you would be wrong. They're going to be looking at the tax-exempt status for any private school. I mean, go down the list, folks. We knew that when the Oberfeld decision, was decided, in oral arguments, the Solicitor General was asked, well, when we look at schools that have a tax-exempt status, and if now they are discriminating against a same-sex staff member, and you're saying same-sex marriage is a constitutional right, what's going to happen to their tax-exempt status as a private Christian university? And Obama's lawyer said, well, it's going to be an issue.
We're going to slide 2 quick in because we always want to honor your time. And Representative Schaefer, do you have a few minutes afterwards if
Sure.
they want to ask you some more questions? Okay, and I know Joanne had to get somewhere, so we'll give a little time afterwards. Let's slide these 2 in. Has anyone proposed, to your knowledge, to use IRS agents that are no longer employed to look into funding fraud? It would be a perfect new job for their skills and talents.
Yeah. I don't think we are lacking the knowledge or the resources to go after the fraud at this point. I think we've lacked focus. We've lacked the political will to do it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know the answer to the question of IRS people. There's a lot of people that would be have a good skill set. Look, retired law enforcement, you name it. We've definitely got to make progress on this.
Okay. I'm a female. I didn't write this. I'm a female. What are my rights if a guy comes into the bathroom with me? That's an excellent question, and I want to know your answer.
All the laws regarding assault, voyeurism, any kind of sexual harassment, those kinds of things, those are still on the books, okay? So you still have those rights. Now, when it comes to private businesses out there, I don't believe it's my job as a state elected official to tell the private businesses what to do with their bathrooms, okay? That's not the domain of the government to step in there. They can figure that out on their own. But when it comes to public facilities, let me tell you what North Carolina did that I believe we should have done. The city of Charlotte passed this crazy transgender policy, okay, as a city ordinance, opening up all their bathrooms. So the North Carolina legislature said, okay, we're going to go into special session and we're going to pass a law that says in any public multi-use locker room or bathroom, so whether that's the roadside park or that's the state university or that's a public school, it's going to be, you're going to go in there based on your gender assignment from your birth certificate. And that's it. They didn't tell Target what to do, but they said just the public places. And so that's when the Obama administration sued them, okay? But now they have a law on their books that they're able to defend. We don't have a law on our books in this regard. And it is being challenged in 1,000 different forms around the state right now. I wish we were in special session. If it was me, I'd call a special session, and I'd get us there, and I'd do just exactly the same thing North Carolina did. But we haven't done that. The state attorney general is pursuing the issue for the schools, but the schools that have voluntarily done it are not necessarily being sued. So by the time we get to Austin in January and get to the point of passing a bill sometime in May or June, 1,000 horses and 1,000 barns are going to be running down the road. And it's going to be a fight, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, all around the state. I hate to be pessimistic, folks, but this is going to be a real fight. And I will tell you this, if the churches don't help us, we're done. There is absolutely no way that Matt Schaefer and my band of colleagues down there is going to be able to get this done. There's no way. If we don't start, if every state rep doesn't hear from their pastor and their districts on this issue, we're done. And let me tell you, the one thing, I want to give you a little bit of honest, something I've learned from being an elected official the last few years. Most pastors don't know me. Or if they do, they've never talked to me. I've run into pastors who don't know the name of their state representative. So, how long is that going to continue? I don't know. But if this is not a spiritual and a moral issue, I don't know what is. And if the churches don't wake up, we are toast. We are getting so many... folks, it is hard to be optimistic sometimes. Because you feel like we're not able to call them traditional values anymore. We just call them our historic values. Because they seem to be just out the window. I called Cornyn's office yesterday, livid, that when my daughter turns 18, he wants it to be the law of the land that she will be signed up for the draft. He not only voted for it, but he spoke out publicly in favor of it. And let me tell you something. People ought to be calling Cornyn's office because that bill in the House doesn't have it on there. He's going to get another chance to vote on this or make a decision. It's not done. If you don't believe that our daughters ought to be signed up, to be compelled to go into battle, then you ought to be calling John Cornyn's office. It just struck. Maybe it's because I have a daughter. Maybe it's because I've been in a combat zone. And I'll speak just personally on that issue. I served with a woman in Afghanistan, and no matter what policy you come up with, no matter what training you come up with, you cannot remove the instinct of men to protect women in a dangerous environment. And so there were times when the mission would have been to do this, and we didn't because there was a woman involved. Because the commander said, don't expose her to danger. You can't take that out of men, folks. You can't write a law or a handbook or a guidebook and say, now listen, whatever you were going to do that day and needed to get done, you go do it no matter what. Doesn't matter if the women are with you. That's my personal belief. It doesn't have to be yours. You can't take that out of our DNA. And it is a problem. It is just, to me, it goes against every fiber of our genetic makeup, of our God-given sense of decency, to not draft our women. What has it become of our country? We're at that point. That just grieved me to no end. And this same principle it's all that there's no difference. We look at God's design, and then we look at everything the world's doing. And the farther we get away from this, the more messes we have. It's, abortion. God designed life. He knew you in the womb. No, we can do away with it. He created them male and female. No, not necessarily. And you know in Fort Worth that the guidelines also said that they were to stop using the words boys and girls? The guidelines actually said stop saying boys and girls and say students and scholars. Get away from God's son. Man and woman joined in one flesh in marriage. Get away from that. Same-sex marriage. Every area, folks, we are seeing God's design being discarded. And we've got to get back to it. God have mercy on our country if we don't. Amen.